it's Alex here from Black Sheep IT Consulting. I'm starting a little series here called Zookeeper Comforts, discussing useful tools I found over the years with Zookeeper. In this first part, we are going to discuss the Zookeeper tools, command line utilities you find in the Zookeeper bin folder, including the Snapshot Comparer that has been introduced by Zookeeper in 3.8, which is available in Siebel environments in 22.6 or higher. And we start off with the command line interface for good measure. So yeah, happy to have you and enjoy the presentation. Bye. So let's start with looking at the bin folder of Zookeeper. So here I'm in a sample Windows environment. In a modern Siebel version, MDE, you have the gateway server directory. You have the registry directory where you will find Zookeeper. And let's go up one maybe. And that's the Zookeeper itself, literally. So the libraries are there. The configuration you will find in registry conf. Remember that here you have your registry CFG file, etc. But and the version 2 folder, of course, where, well, let's go there, where all the important stuff is, the snapshots and the log files. And our goal is to, well, read information from Zookeeper. Only read, because that's the only thing you really want to do with all these utilities that are available. So let's go back to the Zookeeper registry, Zookeeper bin folder. We start our journey there. And there's a bunch of command line utilities for Linux or Unix, SH, and for Windows, CMD. You probably have heard about or even used zkCli, the Zookeeper command line interface, or Zookeeper client, if that. And let's start with that, because that's the number one utility if you want to quickly get insight into what is stored in Zookeeper and what Siebel specific stuff you want to glean into. And sometimes Oracle tells us or tells you on Oracle support, for example, to go into zkCli and even modify or delete data in case some data gets corrupted or whatever. So, but please keep in mind that we are doing read-only commands here only, exclusively. We're not doing any write commands. We're not modifying any content. And you should never attempt to do that unless you're specifically instructed by Oracle to do so. Okay, with that fair warning, let's head over to command prompt of your choice. And I have navigated to the bin folder already, so make sure I have my Java home set correctly. I have a JDK here, which I use as my Java home, because that's Zookeeper is all Java, of course. And the first command you actually run is the zkEnv. So on Windows, I just go with zkEnvCMD. That sets the environment variables for Zookeeper to be for the, well, for example, zkCli to become operational. And zkCli takes a server parameter, so you have to connect to a specific Zookeeper server, -server, followed by the server name, the host name. In my case, it's localhost because I'm on the same machine where Zookeeper is running, and followed by the Zookeeper client port. Now let's stop here for a minute. What is the Zookeeper client port? It's the port that the Zookeeper server has open to listen for client connections. And if you don't know that port, go back to registry conf, open the registry CFG file, and we'll have the client port, right? There's also another file which you can use. Let's open another file explorer. So in your SES, that's the Siebel Gateway Server or Siebel Server installation, you have application container internal. Now the Cloud Gateway is acting as a client to Zookeeper. So if you go to Web Apps, you will have gateway.properties, where the parameters are for the cloud gateway to connect to Zookeeper. And here we'll find the same port number and the registry host name. So you can use that too without the backslash. That's just an escape character. So 2330 is the port. Sieb training or any host name that you find here is a valid host name. And you also find the registry username here, which you need later, and a registry password, which happens to be, well, encrypted in modern Siebel. So you might have to, well, figure that out from your documentation. Okay, back to the command line. So we have the server localhost, and we have identified 2330 as the port, and that gets us a, well, a prompt. So we're now connected, but we are not authenticated yet. So if we want to do some, let's type help. What can we do here? So we can do, for example, an ls command, very Unix style command to list. Zookeeper data is stored in a hierarchy. So if we try to do ls/, like the root, oh, we already get there. We already get something without authenticating, which is good. But probably reading or writing from any of these nodes, like, for example, config or enterprises, that's where the interesting stuff is, probably doesn't work. So we have to first authenticate. And this is done using the add-auth command, add authentication followed by scheme. And for Siebel, we can use the digest scheme. So we type add-auth digest. And now you have to follow with the registry username that you provided in Bootstrap step 3. When you created your registry, you provide a registry username. I use sysadmin, and followed by colon and the password for that registry user. Keep in mind, this is not the Siebel user, even if it looks like a Siebel user. It's a user account in Zookeeper, which has access, read and write access to anything. So be very careful once you do this. So now we are authenticated. So you can type, for example, who am I, very Linuxy, and you see, okay, that's the user that's connected currently. You can also type version, so you see what Zookeeper version or client version you're using. Of course, that goes with the server. So we have 3.8, so Siebel 22.6 or higher comes with 3.8. Okay, so we want to do read-only. So the ls command is probably the most interesting here. So it has 3 switches. Let's try them out here. Let's try that out. Let me stop shortly and make the command prompt a little bit bigger. Okay, that's better. And so let's just type ls without anything / and you get the first, well, the first level of nodes. So that is config, em discovery, service registry. So if we want to navigate with ls/ and you press tab, you get the same information literally. So for example, I want to dive into the config node. So ls config tab gives me, actually ls /config /tab gives me the next level. So there are deployments and profiles. So let's do profiles. You can always do you can tab to completion. If you end the path with a / you can do another tab and get the profiles. And now that looks familiar already. If you're using the SMC, we have enterprise profiles, migration profiles. Ignore the cache and constraints, that's obsolete. We have an AI profile. Where's that? The AI here is called SWSM. So Siebel Web something. Let's see what's in there. And there are the AI profiles just as they would be listed in the SMC. Let's compare that quickly. So here I open the SMC and I see the same three profiles. AI1 is the profiles my environment is using and the two sample profiles from Oracle. So I see the exact same information. I can read that information using the client interface. So let's go down the drain. AI1, what do we get here? So there's an SWSM profile. There's the profile itself. And probably config parameters, that's the more interesting part. So you probably want to see something. Okay, so we have, we have applications, connection management, default. So the settings you see when you go to SMC, you see those default settings, you see the application settings. So let's see if we can go down applications. And indeed, we have call center, DAF, EI, sales, SalesM, web tools. Yeah, looking more like this, for example, call center, there's application. So you can really go down, but it gets a little bit unwieldy as you have to find your way. So, but you can see somewhere deep in there, the values are stored there. But of course, that's LS gives us more of an location capabilities. Now LS has, if you type help again, LS has these switches like S, W, and R uppercase. Let's try that with the switch. Not sure if I can add them here. Oh yeah, there you go. So S kind of gives us the current node details. So it's probably just Zookeeper internal stuff like node ID and data length and number of children. So this call center application has 14 children, which is, for example, object manager is one of them. Let's try the W parameter. And that's nothing different from what we have got. Let's try the R parameter. Okay, so now this is doing a recursive. So you get a printout of all the, let's do it again. Get a printout of all the nodes recursively down the stream, and you can now navigate better. So of course that's totally unwieldy, but it's a way to read information, get structural information about what's stored in the Zookeeper hierarchy, Siebel specific or Zookeeper specific, but you mostly want to go down the profiles or enterprises path. Of course, you would like a graphical interface to do that, and that's totally understandable. And well, here's your graphical interface. That's the SMC. It's literally the browser for that information. And not only reading, but the official way to update and insert information into that hierarchical information in Zookeeper. Okay, so that's zkCli. Now back to the Zookeeper bin folder, where we have now experimented with zkCli, which you probably have done already because Oracle mentions that a lot. zkenv we have used before that. zk server is not really useful here because the server is controlled by the gateway service in Siebel. I've never used it, to be honest. But there's some interesting three other utilities. Let's start from the bottom here. The transaction log toolkit, the snapshot toolkit, and the snapshot comparer, which, by the way, the snapshot comparer is only 3.8 or higher. It's relatively new. And if you go to the Zookeeper documentation, you'll find zookeeper.apache.org/doc/r your version Zookeeper tools HTML. So it's part of the admin and ops guide. You find description of all these command line tools, by the way. So, and I don't want to read it out for you, so you can find the link in the description. But the log toolkit is capable of recovering transaction log entries with broken CRCs. That sounds like, okay, that's very involved, and it's not about reading information, not just like leisurely browsing information. So let's skip the transaction log toolkit. Let's look at the snapshot toolkit. That's more like getting information out. Dump a snapshot file to standard out, showing the detailed information of each zk node. And that can be done without data content and with data content. Okay, now we're talking. So definitely gonna have a look at the snapshot toolkit. So to experiment with it, I'll use my command line. So let's exit out of, no, you don't exit here, quit. Let's quit the zk client session. Back in the Zookeeper bin folder, I have already set my Java home. Let's just do it again for good measure. And I've already run zkEnv. Let's do it again for good measure. And now I can run, zkSnapshotToolkit. Let's just run it without any input. And of course, it requires some input. Probably a snapshot file, yes, and a D or JSON parameter. So D is dump the data for each set node, and JSON dump set node info in JSON format. It can do two things. Okay, let's find the snapshot file. So the snapshot files are in the registry conf version 2 folder. And you probably find up to 10 files because there's a parameter for auto-purging. And I've been playing around with that a little bit, so let's delete that, those data and JSON files. So this is how the folder looks like on a standalone Zookeeper. It looks a little bit different on a clustered Zookeeper. And let's find an old snapshot file, really old, from October last year. So, okay, that's really old. That was like the first snapshot file, or the oldest that's available here. Let's copy that path. And now let's feed it into, let's start with the D parameter. Okay, so snapshot toolkit CMD minus D for data for each set node. That's going to be a lot of data. And I don't want to just read it on the command line. I want to pipe it out to a file. Let's write the file to the same location, and let's rename it to .data. Could be .txt or whatever. Okay, so that will actually takes quite a while because it's several megabytes of information, but has finished. I got that data file here. So that's the readable snapshot, I would say. Let's see if we can open it. The notepad. Okay, nice. Zookeeper. Okay, and that's a lot of data. That's like 7 million. No. So 7 megabytes, 200,000, 200K lines. I would probably have to search here for something useful, like let's say max tasks. That's a parameter. Should appear several times, no? For each and every object manager. As you can see, we have the max task parameter for any object manager. That appears quite a lot. Let's count it. 273. That's probably the number of object managers I have. So let's say I have call center. I want to see call center. So let's search for call center, SCC, OBJ, MGR, ENU, parameters, max tasks. There you go. Okay, that's public sector. That's the real call center component. In enterprise, you see the enterprise location here. And where's the value? What value does max tasks have? Well, that's the value. Okay, data. And the data is, it's not encrypted, it's base 64. So let's see if I can do base64 decoding here. Okay, that's the decoded string. Full persistence, integer value 20. Okay, maximum tasks is 20. Okay, that was a little bit convoluted and probably confusing, but we have dumped all the hierarchical data of one snapshot file, located a parameter value, for example, maximum tasks, and you get the idea how you can locate stuff by simply searching that file, and then, well, decoding the base64 to a readable format, and you have what you want to see. So another way of reading information. Later on, we'll find, for example, how to compare things. And the interesting part is you compare two versions or even two enterprises, and you can imagine how to find out differences. For example, when the max tasks has changed, it would have a different base64, so you could easily identify parameters that have been changed, etc., by comparing two data files. So maybe we'll just do that later on. Let's also use the other parameter, so the JSON parameter. So I'm running the same command with JSON and renaming the output to, well, .json. Okay, so let's see what we get here. It's already done. It's a little bit quicker, and there's a JSON file. Let's open it. Okay, it's not a valid JSON file because it has that Zookeeper header thingy here. Can probably delete that. Okay, that looks more like JSON now. And let's format it. So yeah, install the plugin to format JSON. And can I make it? Yep, it can. It becomes a whopping 120,000 lines. And that looks, well, it looks nice, but definitely it's a hierarchy. So let's see if we can find the same information. Let's see if we find the call center object manager in there. And we find it. That's probably the service discovery. So here we have another name. So because that's so much JSON, you probably have to navigate a lot up and down, see where this belongs to. So I guess it's a component definition. I'm just guessing. Let's see if we can find max tasks. Okay, max task, but it stops here literally. Max tasks is listed 273 times, but this time we don't see the data. So we just see it exists. We see the size, that's the data size probably, and we see a node number. So it's useful to read the hierarchy, but we don't get any data. Okay, so it's less useful, I would say, for reading information because we're interested in the data, right? We really want to read the values and not just know that the parameter definition exists here in that level of hierarchy. But okay, we are exploring, we are explorers, and we have explored the zkSnapshotToolkit command with the two options it has. You can read a snapshot file, dump it to a flat data representation or a more hierarchical JSON, but without the data. So the other tool that's in there and also documented in the 3.8 Zookeeper is the zkSnapshotComparer. So as the name suggests, this is like comparing two snapshots and providing some information what's different, a difference analysis tool. So, well, you need two snapshots, different snapshots, and then you need to run the tool. It has a lot of options, most of which are required. So there's an interactive mode, you have a left snapshot file, a right snapshot file, then you have a node threshold and a byte threshold. So this is all explained in the documentation with an example, and interactive mode is also explained there. You can basically navigate that. So let's just give it a try. So here they run it with one snapshot, another snapshot, and -b, the byte threshold 2. That would denote data delta size threshold. So if the delta between two node data contents is 2 bytes, it will print it. And -n is the node threshold, the descendant node delta size. So if the descendant node, I'm just interpreting it, if there is at least one descendant node, it will print it, or something like that. So probably the higher the numbers, the more filter you get, the more filter effect. If the number goes towards 0, it's less filter. That's my interpretation of that. I've not used the tool much. Just ran it once before recording that video, so I'm pretty fresh to it. But let's see what we get out of a Siebel snapshot using that tool, or 2 Siebel snapshots. So I have this old snapshot, and well, I should have a newer one from, well, November. So that's not quite new, but it's newer. So let's copy that. Now let's try. So we change that command here. So that's the SnapshotComparer CMD. And we want let's just run it without input, so we get the commands. So we want the left file. Let's take the old one. Or let's take the right file is the new one. And the left is the old ones. I can copy that from here. And then we need to specify -b. Let's go with 2, as with the example, -n 1. Let's just see what we get. Okay. Put out a lot of information, or rather not read it here, rather pipe it out to a file. And let's call that compare1.txt. It will write it to the bin folder, hopefully. Okay. So let's go to Zookeeper. Bin, there should be a file. There it is. Okay, so where there's the banner, and here it goes. Okay, count of nodes. So it counts the nodes at different depths. And does that probably again for the other file. And now it's difference, printing analysis for nodes difference larger than 2 bytes, or node count difference larger than 1. So if you have added nodes, etc. So def 0, the root node is found in both trees. There's a delta, so 6k bytes and 57 descendants. So probably something has been added. Config, so here the root, or one level below root. So if we find, for example, well, here's the call center object manager in English. So let's search for it. How often does it appear here? It could be an indicator how often it has changed. Okay, getting interesting here. So enable automation, a parameter of a server component, I guess, found only in the right tree. So the right tree is the new one. So, or auto tile type. So somebody has added that parameter, or edited it, or provided a value. So if you search, for example, for parameters / you can filter out all the parameters that have changed. Yeah, so that's my guess. So let's query for slash parameter slash. So there are 22 matches. Let's mark them. Okay, so these are all the parameters that have changed various places. Set 22. Okay, so and you see where it's found. If it's found only in the right tree, it has been added probably, and found in both trees, it has been changed. No values provided here, just the hierarchical information, but it's a nice enough information. And yeah, I'm going out on a limb here. Let's try that interactive mode. So if I provide -I, it stays in the command line without piping it to a file. It says press enter to move, to print current depth layer. Okay, type a number to jump and print all nodes at a given depth. So let's say depth 1, it should print 7 nodes, right? So here I have opened the old data file, or the dump of the old snapshot and the dump of the new snapshot. So now I'm using a plugin, Compare Plus in Notepad++. You can use any difference capable tool that you want. I find this easy to use enough. So setting the first file and then comparing to the second file. And let's ignore the header. That's very different, of course. And now we see the file is mostly the same, but there will be differences. Like here, differences that are Zookeeper internal. There are different IDs and versions, and which is fine. So the new is on the left, and the old is on the right. So of course the version number is higher. So that's not really interesting. But what's interesting here? Well, service discovery. That's the load balancing, so to speak. So that will be different, of course. So it's not very interesting here. We just noticed there's an object manager that wasn't there before. Okay, that's interesting. And also, let's get past that service discovery. So hopefully somewhere. Config, yeah, that's an interesting, for Siebel, interesting part. So now if we use that next button, we should get to the first difference. Right, that's the migrations profile. Okay, so the migrations profile has been called MIG. It existed in both versions. We see the timestamps here. November, right? March. So we're comparing March to November. And it has changed. So the data has changed, and that's the important part. The data is base 64. So to really, I know it's different already. If I want to see the differences, I can, well, use the base 64 decode plugin. That comes in quite handy, I hope. I have to select all of it, I guess, yeah. Okay, now it's decoding and it's probably reloading the comparison, so I have to do it on the other side as well. And of course, I totally understand that's a manual, very time-intensive process of doing that. You could probably automate it with, let's say, some clever script or macro. I'm not clever enough to just get it out of my sleeve right now. So I have the text profile here already. So let's decode the other side. And I will see the differences in the profile data. Okay, takes a while. There we go. Can we somehow expand it? No, can't. Well, that's a timestamp. Timestamp's different. Okay, right, so that was a very old version of Siebel probably and has been updated. So there's now a Siebel REST endpoint, which doesn't exist in the old version. I think that's the real interesting difference, yeah. Okay, but we got the information that we wanted, let's say. Let's do a search. Can we search here? For example, at max tasks, parameter, it's listed a lot. Hard to find an instance with differences probably, but well, if you're clever enough, you can automate this and find any max tasks entry which really has differences. I'm really browsing fast to, okay, there's something. That's a different parameter. It's not max tasks. Okay. But here's max tasks. Yeah, so the max task parameter for the sales object manager ENU has a different value, right? If at all. I think it's a bit out of sync here. But anyway, so again, this needs a little bit more involvement, but we can produce two text files where we can find any differences, including the differences in things that have been added or removed and things that have been changed in the data. The data is what we look for in terms of Siebel information. So it's possible to do a data by data comparison using the zkSnapshot tool.